In solo leveling, Chairman Go Gun-hee informs Jin that they are planning to go to Jeju Island to eliminate the ants once and for all. To do this, they will need Jin's help. But before Jin can answer, he suddenly feels a rush of magical energy. Gun-hee asks if something is wrong, and Jin responds that it's just some hunters fighting nearby. The chairman laughs, complimenting Jin on his sense, and explains that S-rank hunters are currently warming up in the gym for the Jeju raid in 4 days. He adds that Ryuji Goto and his Japanese S-rank hunters are there as well, and asks if Jin wants to check it out. Baek Yoon-ho and Ma Dong-wook clash, with Master Ma effortlessly flipping Baek onto his back, yelling that Master Baek should be able to use more strength than that. Jin-Woo notes that Baek Yoon-ho is getting slightly pushed back when Choi Jong-in appears, saying that if Baek were to give it his all, Ma Dong-wook wouldn't stand a chance. Jin asks why he's not giving it his all, considering Dong-wook isn't an opponent he can slack off with. Choi explains that it's hard for someone to use their full strength when there are so many eyes around, especially since President Baek turns into a real monster when he fights. They look to the Japanese S-ranks as we are introduced to Ippei Izawa, Mari Ishida, Ken Tanaka, Minoru Hoshino, Atsushi Kumamoto, Kanai Tawata, Tatsumi Fujishima, Kei, Akari Shimizu, and Ryuji Goto. Kari asks who that is up on the higher floor, and the translator informs her that it's Sung Jin-Woo, the hunter who recently became an S-rank. Goto comments that he must be a splendid assassin-class hunter, but the translator corrects him, saying Jin-Woo is a mage class. Ishida points out Jin-Woo to Kei, noting that he is Korea's 10th S-rank hunter. Kei responds, saying, "Don't talk to me. I might throw up." Kei wonders if it would seem like he's hitting on Cha Hai-in if he talks to her, revealing that he also has a sensitive nose. The translator condescendingly remarks, "These are the best hunters of South Korea. There's not much for us to see." Someone overhears this and questions, "South Korean hunters are lousy?" He then explains to the girl that he learned Japanese back in high school. She asks who he is, and we learn that this man is Park Jong-soo, A-rank guildmaster of the Knights Guild. She questions if he's joining the raid, and he replies that he's part of the defense squad. The translator says, "That's a relief," and continues talking down to him as Goto tells her to stop causing trouble. Park Jong-soo adds, "What would a girl only here to work as a translator know?" She questions if he would like to check her skills for himself, introducing herself as Hanakawa, Japan's A-rank hunter. They agree to spar with the rule that the first to grab the other's wrist is the winner. She questions if he's ready to fight with that posture, and the guildmaster replies that he won't need to use his hand except to grab her wrist. She dashes at Jong-soo, releasing a flurry of attacks, but he easily dodges before surprising her by kicking her hand back. Hanakawa comments on his ripped pants before attacking again, but he catches her wrist, saying, "You're too slow, lady." He explains that her combat experience against humans seems non-existent, and unlike monsters, humans don't move in simple patterns. Goto then asks for a spar between the S-rank hunters under the same rules. The S-rank hunters agree to spar, however, they exclude mage class and non-combatant hunters since they would be harder to judge. They also establish a rule that whoever can touch the opponent's back or knock them down will be considered the winner, and instead of 1v1, it's a group competition. Dong-wook uses his gigantification power, and Kenzo gets excited at the idea of a simple battle of pure strength. They clash, trading blows as Minoru dashes at Lim Tae-gyu. The ranger responds by creating distance and firing magic arrows at the opposing team. Meanwhile, Gun-hee remarks that the training facility has been fortified with the greatest magic gems available, yet the S-ranks have already made quite a mess in just a few seconds. Atsushi, questioning why he should follow the rules, prepares to attack Baek Yoon-ho from behind. However, Baek notices and the S-rank dashes away, saying he got nervous again. Baek comments that he definitely felt bloodlust and wonders if Kumamoto is a genius in decision-making or just a wimp. He speculates that Goto might be using Kumamoto to test them and decides to get a little serious. This scares Kumamoto as Baek lunges at him with his claws, seemingly confirming that he's a big wimp. While Kumamoto scrambles to evade, Baek notices Dong-wook as he gets slammed on the ground and Tae-gyu smashed against the wall. While Baek faces a 1v3 situation, Cha Hai-in holds her own against the other female S-rank. Her old nickname, the Dancer, is revealed. given for her nimble moves that resemble a dancer's as she quickly dispatches her opponent. Kanai tries to hit back, but Cha smacks the ground so hard she creates a smoke screen before touching Kanai's back. The dancer runs to help Baek Yoon-ho when Kumamoto appears behind her, thinking it's an easy win. But Cha turns around and spams him with fists, shocking the other hunters as they compare her to a Gatling gun. In this moment, Kumamoto goes berserk as the Japanese hunters explain that when he gets angry, he loses all reason and might even attack teammates. He smashes the ground, tripping Cha, but Kumamoto goes berserk. But just before he can stomp Cha high in, Jin-Woo appears catching his foot and telling the hunter that it's just a competition and there's no need for such bloodlust. Kumamoto gets angrier, grabbing at Jin, but Jin pins the mad hunter and tells Cha that it's best if they call it a loss for Korea since Baek Yoon-ho has been caught as well. At this moment, the translator tells Jin that Goto wants to spar one-on-one. Jin-Woo says he can tell what the Japanese hunter wants just from his aura, thinking it's a good chance to see how much stronger he's gotten from the Demon Castle. Hanekawa tells Goto that Jin accepts his challenge, but only if he fights with his full strength. Goto agrees, noting they have an S-rank healer present, and instructs Shimizu to take care of the injured, saying, "And that one as well," as he points at Jin. Jin lowers his head and says, "Let's get started." But before he can finish, Goto attacks, leaving a trail of wind as Jin dodges, irritating the Japanese hunter, who says Jin can't fool him and vows to reveal all of his secrets. Goto attacks more, but Jin effortlessly dodges while smiling, making Goto very angry. Goto thinks that if he doesn't use his full strength, he might lose, so he decides to kill Jin. The Shadow Monarch gets a cut on his cheek as the system alerts him to someone with immense bloodlust in the area. In this moment, Jin catches Goto's hand, thinking that if he plays around too much, he might get an emergency quest to kill the hunter. Goto says, "You think you can play around with me?" And Jin responds, "I'm not sure what you're saying, but the match would be over if I grabbed your wrist, and even you wouldn't want our match to end this way, right?" They both try to attack, but before they can, Cha Hai-in and Baek Yoon-ho catch Jin while Minoru stops Goto, and Kei creates an ice shield between them. They tell Jin that Goto has to lead the Japanese hunters in a few days, and it's Korea's responsibility if he gets injured here. They end the practice matches for the day. Jin-Woo thinks that he went a little overboard, but realizes that even the S-ranks couldn't detect his hidden soldiers in their shadows. He asks Gun-hee about the Jeju raid as Hanekawa calls on Goto as he stands in shock. Baek Yoon-ho contemplates the value of a hunter like Jin-Woo, who can continuously grow stronger. Realizing it would be fruitless to try recruiting Jin, he decides to move to Plan B. At this moment, he gets a notification for the participation list for the upcoming Jeju Island raid, and is shocked to find that Sung Jin-Woo is not on the list. Meanwhile, Goto is on the phone with Reiji Sugimoto, the S-rank vice master of the Japanese Draw Sword Guild, telling him about a talented hunter in South Korea. Sugimoto laughs, saying, "But I'm sure they're still below you," and Goto responds, "I'm not too sure about that." Sugimoto asks for the hunter's name just as he gets the updated list of participants from South Korea as we see the names: Choi Jong-in, Ma Dong-wook, Baek Yoon-ho, Cha Hai-in, Lim Tae-gyu, and the S-rank healer Min Byung-gu. This surprises Goto as he comments that unless the chairman is crazy, there's no way he would form the raid without Jin-Woo. On Jeju Island, the queen communicates that the ants are eating each other since there is nothing left to eat, and they must leave the island. She tells an egged ant that they need an ultimate soldier to lead the empire and strike fear into their enemies. In this moment, the ant hatches screeching as it emits a terrible aura. Jin-Woo, his mother, and his sister Jin-ah return to their apartment, and Jin is not amused to see the mess his sister made while he was away. Their mother says it's been 4 years since she's had to do housework and asks if they would like to help. They begin cleaning, and Jin's mother asks if he's heard any news about his father during the time she was asleep. Jin replies, "No," and we learn that she doesn't want to move out of the old apartment because she hopes that Jin's father, who went missing, will one day find his way back. Later, while taking a walk, Jin gets a call from Jin-ho, who invites him to come check out the office he got for their guild. Jin-ho tells Jin that if they're creating a guild, they need an office, and asks Jin what he thinks. The soon-to-be guild master responds that it's a little too big for just the two of them, and Jin-ho explains that they need space for the guild master, vice Ice Guild master, and members. Jin-Ho then remembers that a foreigner speaking English was looking for Jin and hands him a note, saying the person will be in South Korea until July 17th. This is when Jin gets a feeling and tells Jin-Ho to wait a second while using shadow exchange as we see a man threatening a girl's life. The man says, "This is why I love this neighborhood." And in this moment, Jin says, "Right? I also love this neighborhood." Jin asks the man why he does these things, and he responds that if he had to give one reason, it's because it's so much fun as he lunges at Jin with the knife. The murderer explains that if he sees something weaker than him, he really wants to play with it. But before he can finish what he was saying, he gets nervous as his knife doesn't pierce Jin's skin, and Jin says that he knows that feeling as well, before taking the knife and cutting the guy up and attaching a high orc to the man's shadow, telling him if he doesn't turn himself in by midnight, he'll die. Tomorrow is the Jeju raid. A helicopter flies to Jeju Island, and Goto shivers while questioning if the feeling in that moment was death. Meanwhile, battleships surround the coast of the island while hunters wait aboard. Ma Dong-wook of the Fame Guild and Lim Tae-gyu of the Reaper Guild depart, while Tae-gyu angrily yells at someone over the phone for putting his movie star A-rank in a spot that could get attacked. It's revealed that hunters from various guilds were requested to prepare near the southern coast of Korea to prevent any surviving ants from attacking the mainland if the raid was successful. Each defense force is led by a B-rank hunter, supported by 3 C-rank hunters and more than 10 D-rank hunters, including retired hunters and those with failed reawakenings. As they fly to the island, a cameraman introduces himself, informing the S-rank hunters that the raid will be broadcast live on TV. Bai questions the chairman's decision to send a cameraman to such a dangerous place, and Dong-wook says it's their duty as hunters to protect people, but tells Mr. Cameraman to understand that his life is in his own hands. Mr. Cameraman responds that there's no need to worry because he still is an A-rank hunter and that hunting is his part-time job. He adds that this won't be his first time in a dangerous place, even though none of them can compare to the place they are going right now. Dong-wook tells the part-time hunter not to worry because the chairman wouldn't have allowed him to come if he wasn't certain the plan would succeed. He adds that this the first time, as well as the last time that normal people can watch an S-rank raid. On top of that, after the third failure, people have been wanting vengeance on Jeju Island. In this moment, Baek turns to Byung-gu and tells him that he's surprised he came, and the healer responds that it's because if he didn't, he knows that Baek would be the first one to die. Hunter Cha asks Baek if he's been in contact with Jin-Woo, to which he replies, no. And in this moment, Dong-wook says it's finally going to start as the Jeju raid begins. Goto and his team arrive at the upper district of Jeju Island, speculating that the ants have begun eating each other. At this moment, all teams, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta check in, and Goto commands, "Release it now!" And they all unleash their magical energy, provoking the ants, causing them to swarm out of the volcano, attacking both the hunters and the helicopter of the Korean team. Choi Jong-in steps up, saying he'll handle it, and calls his skill Flame Spear into action, incinerating the ants. Byung-gu calls Choi impressive, but Choi responds that it's really not, as he only took out one of the ants. This is when he summons a fireball and blasts the ants, explaining that they have evolved quite a bit from last time, and now have resistance similar to those in A-rank dungeons, requiring him to focus more on his flames. In this moment, Choi says he'll test their strength, as he rides his flames down to the ground and chars all the ants in the area. The S-rank says this is the first time in a while he's played with ants, as he says back when he was a kid, he would use a lighter to burn them, and every time they would make a popping noise. Now he only hears loud explosions. Choi tells the other hunters it's safe to come down, and Ma Dong-wook warns that this plan could become like that last 3 attempts with no escape path this time. It's revealed that the Japanese hunters can only pull the ants' attention for an hour tops, so in that time frame, the Korean team will have to kill the queen. Back on one of the battleships, Sugimoto activates electric jamming waves that disrupt the ants' communication with their queen. Meanwhile, Bravo team takes care of some ants as Kanai tells Kumamoto to stop acting so alarmed before he gets himself killed. Team Charlie's Akari comments that at this rate they might kill all the ants before the Korean team can kill the queen, and Tatsumi wonders where Kenzo is, revealing he's playing with the ants by ripping the wings off the ones that can fly. After freezing some ants, Kei of Team Delta questions the fireworks near the entrance of the ant tunnel, and Ippei guesses it's probably Choi Jong-in's doing, and this raid continues. Choi Jong-in creates a flame net over the entrance of the ant tunnel, explaining that his flame prison is typically used for restraining enemies, but ants below B rank shouldn't be able to get over the wall. He then says he'll search for the entrance, as he summons dozens of fireballs, sending them through every hole. Hunter Back questions what he's doing, and the fire mage explains that the tunnels are like a maze, and without caution, they would just end up getting lost. Assuming that the queen is located in a place where an explosion wouldn't be able to reach her, they find a path. Meanwhile, in the city, Jin completes his 10-kilometer run and notices the unusual emptiness, guessing that the raid on Jeju Island has begun. Jin is sure that the hunters are skilled enough to complete it, so there's no point in him watching it anyway. Back on the island, the Korean team is caught off guard after encountering ants with eyes specifically evolved for protecting the dark tunnels. Byung-gu asks Baek if he thinks the queen is really here, since there are cases in history where the king would abandon their people to flee, but Baek shrugs it off, telling the healer that they're only ants and wouldn't know how to do that. As they continue walking through the dark tunnels, Choi gasps as they see countless eggs spread throughout the chamber. The ultimate soldier says he'll burn them all, but before he can, Hunter Cha yells, "Wait!" as she points out a lone massive egg among the rest. Byung-gu says there's no way that can be an ant egg and questions what the spawned here. In this moment, Baek puts his hand on the healer's shoulder, telling him, "We just need to focus on killing the queen and not to worry about anything else." However, at the same time, Baek privately acknowledges the healer, saying, "I can see why Byung-gu is alarmed." Team Charlie deletes more ants, with Akari telling Kenzo that he looks like a mess. Kenzo explains that the ants were annoying and had a strategy, flying at him in formations, adding that he injured his shoulder and hip. Akari offers to heal him on one condition, and Kenzo tells her to stop playing, asking what she wants. And Akari replies, "But I have something that I want. It's not money this time." Kenzo asks what it is, telling the girl that she has more money than him in the first place. In this moment, Kenzo spots ants and tells the healer to stop fooling around, asking her what she wants, when suddenly the girl loses her head, shocking the two Japanese hunters. Kenzo yells that it's nearby and commands them to stay on guard. The creature closes in, and Kenzo attacks before getting decapitated as well. Tatsumi yells before sprinting at the creature and slashing with his blade, but he also loses his head. With 3 Japanese S-ranks dead, the Jeju raid continues. Dong-wook squares off against a royal guard, saying every one of them is going to give a hard time to the S-rank hunters, but a beast is a beast, and compared to the hunters who use a range of attacks, these ants are dull in comparison. Dong-wook calls for Hunter Cha, who swiftly impales the ant's head with her sword, then uses the blade to slice through the monster's body. Another royal guard attacks, but she cuts its head in half before dismembering its body, commenting that they are sturdier than she thought they'd be. Dong-wook acknowledges the royal guard's difference from normal ants, but is relieved there aren't too many of them. Byung-gu reassures the team that he has their backs, and Baek comments saying, "I guess you're not a wimp after all." The healer responds, advising the clawed hero to stop making rookie mistakes, as he smashes an ant's body, explaining that even decapitated ants can live for 10 minutes, so their limbs must be destroyed too. Baek observes that they haven't reached the queen's chamber yet and are already fighting royal guards, noting these ants are from the previous generation. Baek tells the other hunters that he thinks the first generation of these ants were demoted from being royal guards, and suggests they will face stronger second-generation ants and above from now on. Byung-gu agrees and prepares everyone, applying buffs while explaining that they don't only make the hunters' condition better, but also allow them to take on multiple enemies. One of the hunters questions, "If that's the case, should we each take on 10 ants at once?" And the S-rank healer adds that his fighting power is that of an A rank, and if there are any left, he can clean them up. However, Baek dismisses the idea, stating the buffs are sufficient and Byung-gu should support from the rear. Meanwhile, Team Delta makes their way to Team Charlie's position, and after arriving, Ippei discovers Fujishima's bloodied broken glasses before locating his headless corpse. In this moment, Kei gags before throwing off his mask and vomiting, questioning what this vile scent is, saying he's never smelled anything like it before. K looks to the woods and freaks out, launching his ice in that direction, seemingly clearing the forest. However, as he looks through the ice, something slashes him, leaving nothing but bloodied ice shards. Back in the ant tunnel, the Korean team clears the chamber, and Baek silently praises Cha Hai-in for massacring twice as many ants as he did in that short amount of time. Dong-wook calculates they have about 30 minutes left, and Cha identifies the queen ant and her guards by scent. Baek says he'll check first, as he uses his skill Eyes of the Beast to search through the cave and locate the queen and her 8 guards. Dong-wook plans to distract the queen while asking Cha to handle the guards. The ultimate soldier unleashes his celestial fire dragon skill, burning ants in his way as he says it'd be a waste to have any leftover mana. Suddenly, an ant appears behind him, but Taegyu snipes it, announcing his rear support. The beastly hunter agrees with Choi, saying there's no reason to hold back, and transforms into a monster, exterminating all the bugs in his path. Battle continues, and Dong-wook yells, "I'll leave them to you, Hunter Cha," as she stabs her sword into the ground, using her skill Provoking Quake, slowing the ants and buying time for the S-rank tanker to get to the queen. The cameraman stands in shock as people over the radio announce that viewership has just risen by 80%, urging him to get closer. But Byung-gu pulls him back, warning the man that an S-rank boss resides in this place, and nobody will be able to guarantee his safety. Back at home, viewers across South Korea watch the raid with growing excitement, as the nation seems certain to join the elite group of countries that have cleared an S-rank gate. Dong-wook defends, telling Baek to jump on him so he can claw at the queen's legs while Taegyu fires from the rear, piercing the ant queen's face. The queen vomits acid, burning the hunters, but before it can do serious damage, Byung-gu heals them, saying, "If you want to beat us, you should have aimed that attack at me." The queen bites at the healer, but Dong-wook steps in, barely blocking her chompers, declaring that he won't let her get their healer that easily. This is when the ultimate soldier tells everyone to back off as he wraps the queen in his flames and then combusts them, blowing up the queen. The battle seemed close to ending and victory was within reach. However, she let out a powerful screech, worrying the hunters as they try to understand what it was. In this moment, Sugimoto tells Goto that the noise jamming is no longer working, and the ants are making their way back to the tunnel. Goto questions what is happening right now, while Hunter Cha decapitates the queen and wonders if it's finally over. Taegyu questions if they are now one of the 7 countries in the world to have completed an S-rank gate. However, Baek senses something is wrong. In this moment, Ma Dong-wook alarms the other hunters, telling them the ants are making their way back to the tunnel and that they need to evacuate. The hunters try to make sense of the situation when Choi senses his flame barrier has been destroyed. Suddenly, a crushing pressure overwhelms the hunters as an ant enters the cave and screeches, signaling another threat. The entrance of the powerful ant overwhelms the hunters with its terrifying presence as Hunter Cha drops to her knees, unable to withstand the immense pressure. Dong-wook realizes the dire situation but finds himself paralyzed as the creature strides right past him. The ant stops at the queen's head and lets out an angry screech. With so much pressure, it drops the hunters to the floor. Cha barely stands when suddenly the ant appears behind her, hitting her with a backhand so powerful it sends her flying, crashing into the wall. Dong-wook cries out for Cha, but the ant nearly teleports in front of him, shattering his shield and destroying his arm. Dong-wook attacks with his other arm, only for the ant to grab his hand before effortlessly ripping it off. The creature then walks to Baek, who tries to attack, but it walks right through him before slashing the ultimate soldier. Taegyu slides in confident he won't miss his shot, but the beast catches his arrow, breaking it before backhanding him straight through his bow. In this moment, Dong-wook rams into the winged ant, declaring that as long as Byung-gu is there, they have a chance. We see that the S-rank healer is able to use a skill called camouflage, which allows him to lay low and completely hide his presence. However, there's a trade-off, as the healer can't move while using the skill. The giant hunter punches the ant, but it dodges before grabbing his foot and slinging him across the room. Byung-gu grows increasingly nervous when suddenly the ant's gaze locks onto him, scaring the healer as it looks closer. Hunter Baek screams for Byung-gu, but it's too late as the ant punches its arm straight through his chest. With the S-rank healer closing in on death, this one-sided battle continues to unfold. The ant's arm still through his chest, Byung-gu asks Hunter Baek to run before the ant bites his head off. Furious, Beck lunges at the beast, but it catches him by the throat and shocks the hunter by speaking in his late friend's voice. The ant mocks the hunter's weakness, as it's revealed that it has the ability to steal power and knowledge by consuming its prey. It then asks, "Who is your king?" And in this moment, the ant senses something outside, announcing the strong one, before releasing Beck and flying out of the tunnel. Beck, disoriented and alarmed, realizes the rest of the ants are arriving. Meanwhile, Alpha Team scouts around as Ishida points out the loss of communication with Charlie and Delta teams. Goto questions the signal failure and contacts Bravo Team. Kanai reports they are alive but can only reach Alpha Team. Kanai asks if they should scout around, but Goto dismisses the idea of scouting further and orders them to finish up and prepare to meet. At this moment, Goto's communication device beeps with President Matsumoto on the line. On the coast of China, a ship captain discusses the Japanese involvement in helping the Koreans, speculating it's a move to elevate Goto Ryuji to a national-level hunter. His co-captain agrees, noting that all national-level hunters have cleared an S-rank gate, and Goto is the only one who hasn't. The captain questions if there's more to it, saying that to him they're using it as an opportunity to look good for the media. He adds, saying, either way, his skills still won't be enough, while comparing him to a name, Liu Zigang. Back on the island, Goto pauses before reporting casualties to Captain Matsumoto, who coldly dismisses the loss, saying only the strong matter. The captain verifies that the Korean team is fighting the Queen, and Goto says yes, before explaining that there seemed to be a problem with their jamming signals, and all of the ants rushed back into the tunnel. Matsumoto asks what Goto thinks of their chances, and Goto says that with their current team, 0% chance. This is when Matsumoto orders a retreat, as it's revealed that their true goal was the death of the South Korean hunters. Goto tells the others that they're leaving and can retrieve their bodies at a later date. In this moment, the ant flies at Goto, attacking, but he blocks it. However, it still decapitates Ishida. Goto immediately can tell this ant is different, and orders Minoru to join up with the other team as he would only get in the way. Ryuji comments on the ant's fearsome aura, and the ant asks if Goto is the king, to which he confidently responds, "Yes, I am the king." The ant screeches, releasing an immense pressure. In this moment, Goto says, "This feeling, I've experienced it before," as he recalls Jin-Woo. Instantly, his sword snaps, and his head falls. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-in holds the ants back, while Beck asks if he can increase the strength of his flames. The ultimate soldier explains that if he does, he'll burn up the rest of the oxygen they have left. Despite Byung-gu minimizing the damages, the injuries suffered keep them out of the fight. At this point, all they can do is rely on Choi's flames. Beck spots some ants coming from the side and questions if this is the end, when suddenly from his shadow, a black knight appears, holding off the ants as Jin watches from the city saying, "Return." A cameraman braces for death as two ants fly at him. Reflecting on how he should have talked to his father more, he's saved at the last moment when Igris's sword skewers the ants. Meanwhile, at the Korean media station, the boss is stressed, noting that all the S-rank hunters are being killed by one ant. Just as he declares it's over, a worker calls him over, revealing an anonymous figure has appeared at the scene. In disbelief, the chief orders the broadcast to resume live coverage as he exclaims, "Nothing will stop us now." Back in the cave, Jin-Woo stands with his shadow army. Iron uses his taunt skill, successfully drawing the ants' attention, and Jin says, "Good job," before pulling out the Demon King's daggers and proceeding to easily cut down the attacking ants. Behind Tusk's barrier, Dong-wook wonders what just happened and who is fighting right now, and Baek reassures him, saying, "There's no need to worry anymore. Everything will be fine." Igris grabs an ant's face, smashing it into the ground before decapitating two more, while Tank and Iron also make quick work of the bugs. Jin-Woo considers speeding things up and commands, "Arise," resurrecting the fallen ants as shadows. The terrified cameraman narrates the scene for the broadcast, stuttering that he's unsure what's happening but that the ants are killing each other. Jin takes this time to gather the hunters and gives them all a potion that heals all of their wounds, as he says he'll explain everything later. Dong-wook questions why Hunter Cha isn't waking, and Jin explains that she's in critical state and beyond his current ability. Jin tells Dong-wook that the chamber's been cleared and they need to leave before more ants rush in. At that moment, the winged ant enters, declaring that the man outside wasn't the king, and questions if there's anyone who can be a king. Beck, panic-stricken, wonders if the ant managed to kill Goto Ryuji. Jin-Woo instructs Master Ma to take care of Cha as he approaches the ant. The ant asks if Jin is the king of the humans, and the Shadow Monarch responds responds, saying, "Wow, a bug is talking to me." Ant mimics Goto, commenting on Jin-Woo's dangerous aura before screeching at him as Jin-Woo responds, "Now you seem more like a bug." 5 minutes earlier, in South Korea, the broadcast is interrupted, and people watch in horror as the news reports Byung-goo's death and the uncertainty about the safety of the other hunters. Suddenly, an unidentified hunter appears on the scene and the broadcast resumes. Meanwhile, Sugimoto replays the audio between Goto and the ant for Captain Matsumoto. The president questions where the monster is at, and Sugimoto informs him that it reappeared in the queen's lair. Matsumoto angrily realizes the Korean team is still alive, and Sugimoto confirms this while reporting the presence of a new entity with magical energy rivaling the ants. The president in this moment demands the broadcast that's being shown in South Korea. Chairman Go Gun-hee excitedly breaks his chair while watching Jin-Woo, who gets punched in the face with enough force to kill an S-rank hunter. The impact crushes the floor beneath him and sends a shockwave through the chamber. Beck and the Ultimate Soldier comment on their insane magical energy, and as the dust settles, the ant, disappointed, says, "You are not the king either." But before it can finish, its eyes widen as Jin-Woo stands unmoved. The monarch spits blood and uses his Dominator's touch ability to pull the ant to its knees before punching it so hard in the face he rockets the creature across the room, causing an explosion as it crashes. This stuns the other hunters as they question if Jin-Woo is really a mage-type hunter. The ant angrily flings itself back into the battle, and Jin-Woo comments that it's pretty sturdy thanks to the exoskeleton, but it's getting in the way. The ant goes for a smash attack, but Jin blocks it with one arm as the floor beneath them crumbles. Jin returns with a punch to the body, and the ant punches him in the face before they both punch each other on the head simultaneously. The A-rank cameraman thinks about how he can barely withstand the pressure in the room and how their magic alone is making him lose consciousness. In this moment, the monster realizes it's losing in a battle of strength and questions the true identity of the human before him as this intense battle continues. Jin-Woo and the ant punch each other simultaneously, creating a shockwave that knocks both of them back. The ant is in disbelief as its exoskeleton cracks, muttering, "Impossible." Suddenly, Jin appears in front of the ant, delivering another powerful punch that knocks the ant back. However, the ant retaliates with its razor-sharp tongue, which slices Jin's cheek as he jumps back. The monarch takes a knee as poison spreads through his body, revealing that the ant absorbed this ability from consuming poison snails, and the poison grew stronger when mixed with his magical energy. The monster comments on Jin's state, saying, "You seem to be having a bit of trouble, human," before launching its claws at him. Meanwhile, outside on the island, Kanai questions Minoru about what happened, but Minoru shivers and mutters, "We can't win. It doesn't matter if we're S-rank." Kanai grabs the shaken hunter, questioning if he's gone mad before tossing him aside and calling him pathetic. Back in the cave, Jin grabs the monster's wrist just before its attack can land, shocking the ant and sending it crashing into the wall with a punch. As the ant gets up, Jin's poison is healed, and he realizes that the creature seemed oddly happy when it landed that attack. This is when we learn that Jin can sense emotions from increasing his sense stat, and he notes that the ant is definitely getting nervous. But the same goes for the hunters. Jin jumps into the air and stomps at the ant, but it dodges, surprising Baek and the Ultimate Soldier as Jin catches a glimpse of the ant in the air. The flying ant thinks about how it can defeat Jin, compressing its body to focus solely on speed. Jin summons his daggers, and they face off. The ant swiftly attacks Jin, but he evades, returning with a slash that the ant barely blocks. Jin attacks with his other hand, but the ant blocks that too, before sending Jin flying into the roof. Jin blasts himself back into the winged monster, and they continue their high-speed battle. The ant grows anxious as he says not only is he keeping up, but he's getting faster. Seeing that the ant's exoskeleton has been considerably damaged, Jin tries to end it. He uses Vital Strike, and in this moment, it gets upgraded to Mutilate as the ant darts away. Jin questions where the ant thinks it's going and uses his upgraded skill, Mutilate, to cripple the ant. The monster swats Jin away, and he bounces back as the beast questions if there's an aspect in which it has an advantage. In this moment, it screeches, calling an army of ants and sending them at Jin-Woo. The ant questions, "How is that, human?" And Jin smirks, saying, "Go forth," as he sends his shadow army into battle. Jin's army clashes with the ants as Igris swiftly takes down multiple foes while Tusk's guards split and punch right through them. Jin calls Tusk forward and warns him to make sure he doesn't hurt the humans, or he won't be summoned again. Tusk transforms into a giant before using the hymn of the fire dragon to blast the ants so powerfully that it blasts right through the back of the mountain. This leaves the hunters in awe as Taegyu asks if that's really a summoned beast, and Dong-wook comments that it looks like the Demon King if he descended to the human world. The Ant King stands completely shocked, thinking about how he was supposed to be the strongest, and says, "The one who would constantly grow was me, the king." In this moment, Jin appears through the flames and the ant thinks, "Run! I have to run away!" As Jin gets closer, the ant regenerates its wings, and Jin notes that he's never seen a monster that can absorb the abilities of the beings it ingests. The winged ant launches away, thinking it has to get further. However, Jin uses his Dominator's touch ability to slap the ant into the floor. But when Jin approaches the monster, it scurries away as quickly as possible. Jin jumps into the air and uses his skill, Mutilate, to carve the ant up, defeating the strongest ant. Bayek then yells for Jin, pointing out that Cha is near death. Jin frustratingly questions if he took too much time and realizes he must look for a hunter. However, the Shadow Exchange skill is still on cooldown, and he's never tested it with anyone else. And even if he rides Kaisel, Hunter Cha will still die. As Jin thinks of what he can do, he suddenly asks the cameraman to turn off his camera for a moment, saying, "Hurry, or I'll break it." Jin tells his shadows to look for Byung-gu's body, and a high orc walks back with his headless corpse. Jin questions if it'll even work with his head gone. But the system tells him shadow extraction is available, and Jin thinks this is the only way before saying, "Arise," summoning the human shadow, but it fails. Jin, in disbelief, says it again, "Arise," but it fails again as he notes that it must be Byung-gu's strong will to not become a shadow soldier. He adds that it wasn't right making a human into a shadow soldier, but the ones alive should live, and says it one last time, "Arise." Shadows envelop the healer's body, and Beck grabs Jin, questioning what he's doing to his friend before shockingly pausing, saying, "Your skill! The nature of your skill! The skill of controlling the dead!" Jin-Woo resurrects S-rank healer Byung-gu as one of his shadow soldiers, causing Dong-wook and Choi Jong-in to stand back in shock. Byung-gu's shadow moves to Cha and effortlessly heals her. Jin explains to Bayek that he can instantly tell what kind of person Byung-gu was, as he didn't give the shadow any orders, but it's already healing Hunter Cha on its own. "He's a very kind and warm person," Jin comments. Bayek, clenching his fist, replies, "He is, but that is no longer Byung-gu." The cameraman stands flabbergasted, realizing why Jin wanted the camera turned off, thinking, this shouldn't be broadcasted for the world to see. The ultimate soldier realizes that the more intense the battle, the stronger Jin's power grows, adding that it's quite a fearsome power. Beck, still with his hand on Jin's shoulder, says he's sure Jin will face more battles in the future and will need the S-rank healer's power, but Byung-gu is tired of fighting. He asks if Jin could not send the kind shadow back into battle. Jin thinks for a second before taking the beastly hunter's hand off his shoulder, saying, "That's the second time you've touched my shoulder." Acknowledging that it's a request this time, he says, "Besides, I was thinking the same thing," as he walks to Byung-gu's shadow and cancels extraction. In this moment, the shadow notices Hunter Beck and smiles at him before disappearing. Outside, a helicopter flies over the island as someone yells, "The hunters are coming out!" While boarding the helicopter, Jin tells Beck he's going to stay behind since he still has something to do, and he'll clear the way for them. This is when Jin summons Kaisel and tells Bayek he'll see him later, before taking off and flying right through the ants. On a ship, Minoru reflects on his experience with the monster, certain that the raid was a failure, saying, "No one can defeat a monster like that." However, Sugimoto dismisses it and tells him the raid is over. This shocks the shaken hunter as he exclaims, "That's impossible," while Sugimoto recalls his conversation with Goto before the raid. Suddenly, they are alerted that the ants are spreading out, and the ships prepare for battle. Back in the cave, Jin's shadow soldiers clean up the ants while the mages burn the eggs. Jin notes that even killing unborn ants adds to his experience. While looking through his inventory, he notices something and pulls out the Demon King's longsword deciding to test it out. He gives the unhatched ants some electrotherapy and realizes it would be a waste to leave it in his inventory, so he decides to take care of the remaining eggs with it. In America, David Brennan, the director of the Bureau of Hunters, watches the footage. Michael Connor, who we learn is the man with him, explains that a hunter controlling hundreds of soldiers is an anomaly and a waste in a small country like South Korea. David agrees, asking if there's any more information. Michael Connor reveals the Sung Il-hwam incident, explaining that Jin's father was found and captured in a dungeon in the northeast United States. He adds that now is a perfect chance, since none of the other countries know about him. David acknowledges the significance of taking two of South Korea's S-rank hunters and its impact on their relationship. Michael asks, "Isn't he worth it?" And after taking a moment, David responds, "Can you make it happen?" Back in the cave, Jin wraps up and finally reaches level 100 as he approaches the dead ant, commenting on its fearsome aura. He says, "Arise," and in this moment is enveloped in darkness, unable to sense anything and questioning if the extraction worked. Suddenly, he returns to normal, relieved to see he didn't fail. The new shadow soldier, with the rank of general, kneels before Jin. Jin says he's never seen the general rank before and concludes it must be the next level after Elite Knight, indicating that this ant is much stronger than Jin's other shadows. Jin-Woo prepares to add the queen to his army when suddenly the ant he just turned into a shadow speaks, asking Jin to give him a name. Jin, puzzled, asks the ant how it can talk, and it stutters. "I was able to." This makes Jin think, wondering if it could speak because it could before becoming a shadow. However, Iron was a human and couldn't speak after becoming a shadow, and the same applied to Byung-gu and Tusk. He realizes the only difference is in ranking and thinks that the others might be able to talk if they level up. Jin asks the ant if it can still be obedient to him despite being the one who killed it. The ant responds that it is not dead but reborn by Jin's power, adding that it has happiness overflowing inside and will always follow him. The shadow soldier once again asks for a name. Jin considers that Gaemi, Korean for ant, or simply ant, wouldn't be right, and decides on a name that distinguishes him from the rest of the ants. In this moment, the famous author who wrote the book The Ants pops into Jin's head, and he bestows the name Beru on the general. Jin then steps to the queen and says, "Arise," summoning the queen, who is also of general rank. Suddenly, the shadow ant's signal becomes disturbed as Jin's connection weakens. Beru explains that the queen's normal ability is to control the ant colony, and his control is given up to her. Jin comments that there isn't much magic power compared to her rank and asks why. Beru explains that the queen's magic is used for reproduction, and that it's impossible to reproduce without a body. Jin confirms that the queen doesn't fight, and decides there's no need for two heads of the organization, canceling the extraction. Shadow soldiers collect the magic crystals, but Jin tells them to stop as they'll be used for rebuilding Jeju Island, noting that the one from Beru's body will be enough. Jin contemplates how to sweep up the remaining ants, and Beru informs him that the ants are scattering due to the loss of their leader. Jin asks for a count of the ants, and Beru reports there were 8,700 ants before the raid, with 4,000 survivors remaining. Jin is surprised by the high number of survivors and asks Beru if he can exterminate them all. The shadow ant responds confidently, "If you give me an order." Meanwhile, on the ships, Park Jong-soo, guild master of the Knights Guild, yells, "The ants are flying over here!" The ships fire and mages cast spells, blasting the ants, creating explosions in the sky. A mage passes word from a radio that the ants are heading north and starting to clash with the Knights Guild, while Sun Ki-hoon commands the B-team to attack as they prepare for battle. A woman from the Fame Guild suggests they join too, and a man yells, "Slaughter every single one of them!" A hunter questions, "What are you doing?" as he explains that the ants are the same level as a B-rank hunter, and that everyone needs to stay in formation so they can recover the reputation of the Reapers Guild. The once cocky movie star freaks out as the same hunter comments on him being nothing but an empty shell. The ants arrive to the shore of Korea, and Lee Joo-hee asks Song Chi-yul if he thinks they can handle them. The ants move quickly towards the hunters when suddenly something rips them apart. The two hunters are shocked as Joo-hee questions what just killed the ants. The fire mage comments on the incredible speed, saying he couldn't even catch it with his eyes. It's revealed that Beru is tearing through the winged ants, and this arc continues. Follow for more!